Hi, it's Mark from Vaadin, and today I'm going to show you what it might look like when you're using Vaadin Copilot to help you create UIs faster. So we're working on this kind of internal back office application here, and it's a work in progress. So we're just going to go ahead and jump into the issue tracker and grab some issues. So the first one is add banner to welcome screen. And seems pretty straightforward. I'm gonna go ahead and just copy the image in the browser and go and find the welcome page. And with the welcome page open here, I'm going to enable Copilot. And I can do that from the button down here, or I can use the keyboard shortcut, which is to hold Shift and tap Command twice on Mac or Control twice on Windows and Linux. And that's much easier to kind of quickly turn Copilot on and off. So with Copilot on, I can kind of see what things I have here, elements, I can select something. There's also more features tucked away to the side so I can get a complete overview of the view here. But for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and paste in that image here. And I maybe don't want it right in that place, so I can go ahead and drag and drop it up here, for instance. And also I noticed that there's a typo here. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that. Connect with colleagues. And now we're going to jump over to the code. So go to source will take us to the place where that particular component is added. So we can see here first we're in a Java flow view. We have both React and Java views in this project. So this is a Java view. It's added an image here and imported that image into the project. So it's just ready to go. Yeah, so I think we're done with that issue. Let's move on. Next issue we're gonna address is an admin employee editor. So it's an admin CRUD type view. It's a work in progress, so the editor UI is still missing here. So let's take a look at that. So that would be, let's turn Copilot off so we can navigate normally. The employees view here with kind of a list of the employees, but we can see that there's no editor here. And enabling Copilot, I can kind of see, yeah, there's a place here for the editor. So what we're gonna do is jump over to source again. We can quickly find the place where that editor is created in the UI. And now I know that the grid is using the entity we want to use. So let's just go find that here. So we have the grid with a user. So hop over here and see it's a regular entity. So I'm just gonna go ahead and drag in that and drop it where we want the editor UI. So now we can see that it has created these fields for us. So that's pretty nice. Gonna go and see what that looks like in code. So we can see here in that place where we just realized we were going to start doing this UI, it has added these things to the layout and so on. The actual fields are defined up here, which is nice because we're going to need that in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and check here, and I think that this combo box, well, first of all, I'm going to want to have it typed. So we want that role. And then actually I do want it to be a multi-select. Multi-select combo box. Maneuvering here, so something like that. And yeah, we want the values to be added. Maybe that's not the best place to do that, but last, so of course we want to connect the data to this, and as mentioned, now that we have kind of perfectly matching fields between the entity and the input fields we have generated, it's quite easy. We can use the bean validation binder here for the user class and just kind of enable bind instance fields. So now we should kind of turn off that. We should have a working editor. So that was pretty easy, but I remember there was one more thing here. Somebody mentioned that, yeah, you should add icons to each field, but annoyingly they haven't defined like which icons. So we could look up the documentation for the icon set and try to pick out something that seems kind of fitting. But I think right now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna hop over to the application, enable Copilot, and then enable the input prompt for the AI, and just see what it does if I give it that comment. Just copy and paste the comment in here and see what that does. So instead of kind of having to go through those fields and kind of choosing the icons myself, as it turns out, the AI is pretty good at that. So now we can just skip that. And we are done with this task as well. Next, user should be able to edit own details on the profile page. So for this, we have an Figma design. So most are probably have heard about Figma. It's a design tool that kind of UX designers use quite a lot. It's quite nice for that sort of work. It is a little bit of a drawing tool, so it's good if you use a design system like here, where you will get kind of a perfect match between the components used and the ones that we have in our actual project. So right now I'm gonna go ahead and kind of select kind of these two things, the header and the actual form, because this whole screen is kind of the whole application and we don't need that. So I'm just gonna, again, copy this, go over to our application and find the profile page. And we can see this already has my name here. So maybe there's some data binding going on. But we'll just first go ahead and paste in that from Figma. And you can see it just right away. We have all those fields. So at this point, let's just hop over to the source code. And we can see here is the data binding that was existing for my name. So I'm just going to go ahead and move that to that new header we have and remove that title thing. Let's see where that gets us. Yes. And so we can see here that this is already using the very convenient Hilla use form hook, which gives us all these kind of convenient things we can use for binding the form. So what we could do now is just go through and for each field kind of add a binding. But again, maybe these repetitive tasks is not kind of what I'm like to do. So let's see what the AI can do. We're going to be quite concise here and see what it does. So bind fields, I asked it to do. And it's taking a while, but I don't have to do that work. So now you can see it's actually wired everything up here. So that seems to be working quite nicely. Just to be sure, I think we're gonna log out and log in as a different user. And not save the passwords. And yeah, that seems to be working. So John Doe. And me. Nice. Next. Create a directory view. This has not been designed by a designer, I think. It's a little bit vague and leaves a little bit to imagination. So we're gonna have to improvise. we're going to do a directory view where employees can find each other's information. So let's just dive into that. And we can see that we don't really have a ready view for that. So the first thing I'm going to do is enable Copilot, go to view, views and routes. I can pop that out here. And kind of what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new route. So directory, we're going to do a hill view, and yeah, that's fine. So now we have a new view here with its own little route, and we can start kind of fleshing out that directory screen. So I know kind of next thing we're going to use here is the palette. So we have all these components that we can use to build views, the basic component set. But I also know that down here we have something called composites, which is kind of bigger things consisting of multiple components. So we have a card that we could use, but there's also a card list. So I think I'm gonna try that out. And that looks pretty promising. If we look at the structure here, we can see that it's an unordered list with each card as kind of a list item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these kind of statically added things because we're going to do a loop and do data binding and so on. We can also remove the header, and maybe we should add some padding to that to make it look better. And now we can kind of start thinking about kind of what we want, how we want this to look. So I'm imagining there would be a profile picture and then a name. And so if that would be me, and then kind of here, next we have kind of, if I can select it, title, duplicate that up a few times and see. We have department, and then maybe kind of the most important contact information here. So just something like this. And then maybe for the button we would have call and email. Okay, so maybe go to source and see where we are now. So here we have kind of the structure. It's pretty clear. We have our pieces of information here, the photo, and kind of the card starts here, and we have a list. So I think we're ready to start data binding here. For that, we can actually go ahead and look at the UI services list here, and we can see that there is a user endpoint with a find all. So for our purposes, that will be perfect. So first we're going to import some stuff. So the user endpoint that we just saw, and then the actual user that we're going to get the information from. Use effect from React we are going to need to use, and then use Signal for the reactive behavior of this. So when information gets updated, everything reacts. Yes, so what we're going to do next is we're going to do a fetch our users here. So I'll just format that a little bit. Let's go through that. So that's our users list where all the users will end up, and using a signal, as I mentioned. This is our small fetch call. So it just basically at this point calls the user endpoint and fetches all the users. And we're going to call that in the use effect lifecycle hook. So we get those users. So right now we're going to be ready to kind of start looping over that. So we're going to do a map over the the users list, and then we're gonna need to end that looping here and remove an extra thing. Yes, and then one thing we need to remember in React is these elements that get repeated should have a unique ID, so React can just kind of update the right thing. So for that, we're now going to use the user ID. And right about now, because we had that key missing for a while, we will need to reload. And now we can see we have kind of the right amount of cards, but they are still not data bound, but we're getting there. So let's start working on this. Let's do the image first here. So photos, and it's actually user photo should be the right thing here. I have a typo, which is there. There we go. Now we're getting photos. Then let's start just connecting here some information. So first name, user last name, user title, user department. This will be our user phone. Actually, let's put a little divider in there between those pieces of information, and then kind of user email. And now you can see we're kind of getting some information in here. And the next thing to mention is that now that these are data bound, I can't kind of edit the contents, of course, but I can still kind of affect how it looks and kind of the layout and the styling and so on. So for instance, if I kind of wanted to make some things centered here, I can do that. If I want to start kind of styling something, maybe we can do the buttons. So we have the theme editor here, which will help us. Let me pop that out for you. So for instance, if we want kind of the border radius, we can affect the label kind of. Maybe I want black text, and actually our text doesn't need to be that big. So what this does is it writes CSS for us. So now you can see it has been using the correct selectors and adding those styles. And you can see here in the template that it added this class name here, and we can actually go ahead and copy that to the other button and see that's affected too. Other ways to style is I quite often find myself using the Chrome inspector. So you can see if I wanted to kind of experiment with Flexbox things, which I often do, or just kind of experiment with, well, whatever. Let's add a background color and use the first one here. So kind of experimenting with things, adjusting things and so on. Chrome Inspector is quite nice, but if I press reload now, those changes are lost. So usually you end up kind of copying and pasting each separate thing. With Vaadin Copilot, you can actually use the theme editor here. Let me pop that out again. To go to the browser inspector tab, and it will detect those changes that we did. And then we can go ahead and write those changes to the project. So now when I press reload, those changes have persisted. So now I can go ahead and kind of keep editing here. So let's remove the padding for that. Looking pretty nice, but the gap looks misplaced. But now these float together a little bit. So now maybe I go back to my styles and kind of do manual changes here. I can do that as well. And these are kind of immediate. So if I wanted to split some of these into kind of, let's leave the background color, split this into hover. So some of them are applied on hover. That's now applied as well. So now we can see that when I hover this call button, it's getting a background color. So then some additional helpers I can use here is kind of, we have, for instance, add ClickListener here. That will add a little stub where I can kind of go ahead and add code that would be appropriate for that case. So let's do the same thing here. And this one will be, yep, mail to. So now I can actually, I have this kind of responsive UI here with nice information. It's styled as I kind of imagined it from the nice design we had here. And it's actually working. So if I press call here, well, let's not do a FaceTime right now, but we could. So that's kind of showing how you with Vaadin Copilot can kind of call on it whenever it feels convenient. And you can kind of jump back and forth between editing code, editing CSS, using the browser inspector, and using Copilot features, whichever feels the most convenient at the time. So that's all I had for you today. See you next time.